go back to the requirements perspective, what exactly they're talking about, right? So this is like kind of a slide that kind of talks, there are these articles, principles, and all those things, but in layman terms, these are like at least about the 10 different areas that you need to be considering as you are trying to comply with GDPR, right? The overarching requirement is like you need to have some kind of strategy, governance, and management of this whole program, right? So that's what the first one talks about. So you need to have um, small office. It could be one person office. Still thinking about this whole thing, how you are going to be handling it, and how you are going to be, managing these different requirements that are coming in. And then the most important thing that they bring into the table is the privacy by design. So what essentially it means is you are proactively and continuously, those are the two keywords, proactively and continuously mitigating the privacy risk, and not by just by like you're reacting to certain issues and stuff, right? So your design of the system, your the whole way you're capturing the data, processing, storing, and sharing the data, right? The whole thing is like based on the proactivity and the continuation of the whole how the privacy risks are going to be minimized. So that is number one. So you need to demonstrate that. So what are like some of the process for the privacy by design? So we'll get into that in detail probably in a couple of slides. And then the next one is, of course, information security is part of GDPR. And although like it talks a lot about privacy, you cannot just implement these privacy controls directly. So it needs to have a solid information security program around it, and you be able to manage the whole thing, right? And then the next one is, since this is primarily applicable for European Union residents, EU resident, so there is a lot of requirement with respect to cross-border data strategy in terms of how you're transferring data from a country, like say, for example, in Europe to US or like other countries, and what kind of contract classes you have within for transferring the data, where you are storing the data, and other sort of stuff, right? And then data processor, I think like we already talked about that, controller and processor. So we are, if you are a controller, then you need to make sure all your vendors are aware of this requirement, and if you're sharing that information, if they're processing you data for you, and then like you need to make them accountable. Well, the way like you will make them accountable is like you will basically get into a contract agreement with them, and then like that will clearly outline what exactly they need to do with respect to your data, and what are the reasons where they would use your data, how they will process it, like also the sort of a documentation of this thing apart from your requirements of how they need to be protecting the data, right? So that is like in the whole supply chain system, like they want to make sure that all the processors that are involved in processing EU resident data, they need to be made accountable, and you need to have the contract in place. And then on the right side, like the policy management, which is pretty, just like any other compliance program, whether you're complying with HIPAA or like you're complying with other programs, you need to have proper policies in place. You need to have procedures to implement those policies, and then you need to make sure that those things are all implemented, and then like you have continuous monitoring of those procedures and things to make sure that all your policies are in fact being followed. Right, so that's the policy management part of it. And so essentially it involves not only implementing it and auditing those policies to make sure that they are in place properly. Next one is the training and awareness. Training and awareness, staff who are handling this data, they need to be aware of why and what type of data that they need to provide additional safeguard, and then like what they need to do in terms of any data breaches and stuff, like who they need to be reaching out to, and what are like some of the best practices and stuff. Those things needs to be included as part of your training. This training also includes like maintaining the training logs and frequently providing them an update, providing the staff an update on what is happening in the industry, and then providing them more. And then data lifecycle management is something that GDPR specifically talks about a lot. So what essentially it means is how the data is flowing, where are you collecting it, where are you sending the data to, and how you're processing the information, and then like where you're storing it, and then how finally the data is being discarded, or like how you're getting rid of the data from your whole life cycle. So that's the data life cycle management. So if you see as part of your GDPR assessments, a lot of people will do the data inventory mapping and the privacy impact assessment and all those sort of thing. Those all comes under the data lifecycle management. Essentially, taking a step back, looking at the big picture and understanding the whole flow. Because a lot of enterprises, if you see, different department handle different things, and they have no clue of like where the data is coming from, what kind of data they are storing, where it is stored, and all this sort of thing. That's why they wanted the companies to have a data lifecycle, the whole data lifecycle management process and stuff. And then the next one is the most important one, in my opinion, with respect to GDPR, which is the GDPR law provides the individuals, that is the consumers and the European Union residents, the rights in terms of determining what the companies can do with the data that they're collecting on behalf of them or about them, right? So there is several classes, especially with respect to individual rights, and what is that they could control, what is that they could request, and all the stuff. We will get into that in a minute. And then the last thing, things happen. So we all know how, no matter how robust you have your technical controls and privacy control and whatnot, still things happen, and then like they want you to notify the authorities, concerned authorities, within 72 hours from the time you identify a breach. So that is like one of the key requirement with respect to this. Is if you compare this with a lot of the other requirements, especially in the US, like say for example the HIPAA and other stuff, they like US consumers got like about US organization got about 60 days to notify the patients, and also this HHS, the agencies and other agencies, right? But here in this case, it is like really stringent, within 72 hours. So as you could imagine, one, you need to really identify, hey, okay, the breach has happened. The second one is, you need to have the ducks in a row, as they call it, right? So to make sure that at the moment you understand that there is a data breach, then you need to be informing people who are impacted, and also the authorities. So some of these things we already discussed, so I'm going to be skipping it.
For more information, click on the link below or visit databrackets.com.